Hi, my name is Jacob and I was born in 2003, so prepare your ass for bias! Hey, welcome to the 18-year-old who's about to go into college at the end of August, spends his time rambling about children's shows instead of preparing for his course or learning to drive show. It's got a title long enough to rival a goddamn isekai, fucking hell. I remember a time when children's programming was good. Back when it had passion, soul, and most importantly, effort put into each episode of each show. If you were a kid growing up in the UK during the 2000s, you could choose from channels such as CITV, Cartoon Network, Boomerang, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Pop, I'm running out of fingers, Kix, I'm counting in binary now because it's easier, and Jetix, which was replaced by Disney XD in 2010, after which Disney XD was then shut down in October of last year. May they both rest in peace. However, there was one kids TV channel that I personally found myself tuning into more than any other, I think, and that was cbbc. cbbc was launched in 2000. Oh fucking hell. cbbc was launched in 2002. Wait, hang on, really? Huh. Well, if Wikipedia says so. The cbbc channel was launched on the 11th of February in 2002, but it actually originated as a 10-minute programming block on BBC One in 1937, when BBC One was called the BBC television service, and was also the only television channel available in the UK. Okay, I'm done. This block was called For the Children, and it existed until 1939 when Europe imploded in on itself thanks to a little thing we like to call World War II, during which the BBC decided to cancel For the Children and bail on the younger generation entirely. Because they were the ones that weren't going to be using the television. Not the older people who were out fighting the war that the programming was aimed at. Yeah, I don't get why they did this. After World War II was finished, For the Children returned to the BBC channel, with a doubled runtime and a younger cousin named For the Very Young. What the fuck is that name? This block would evolve over time to become what we would know today as CBeebies, which I'm just now realising is just BBC backwards. What the fuck? With a second chance of success and a burst of post-war energy behind them, For the Children would continue to be broadcast on BBC, unsurprisingly gaining popularity with children since this block was literally the only way to access entertainment aimed at them specifically. It would evolve and expand over time, going through different names and eras that I do not care to mention right now, until 1985 when it was finally renamed to Children's BBC. Then, just sort of throughout the 90s, people started calling it cbbc as sort of a shorthand for it, until finally the BBC rebranded the programming block to cbbc, which is what we know it as today. Also, for some reason between 1996 and 1999, cbbc shows were broadcast on the Nickelodeon UK channel. Like, they were still broadcast on cbbc, it's just now, like, the cbbc block existed on BBC One as well as Nickelodeon. I don't understand this at all. What? I don't get it. After the 90s are over and done with, the BBC decides they want to turn cbbc into its own separate television channel. And in 2002, they launched the cbbc channel. And oh boy, did they launch it. cbbc came out with a bang, featuring shows like Raven, Smile, and some other shows that I didn't watch because I wasn't even born yet. Oh, I should also mention that I'm mostly going to be talking about game shows in this video because that is what I was absolutely obsessed with as a child. Okay, just a fair warning about that. A lot of the programming on cbbc during the 2000s were game shows. Of course, we have the aforementioned Raven, a wonderfully engaging show grounded in fantasy, as well as 50/50, coming from the original programming block, which is a nice little simple game show that wonderfully captures the feeling of racing your friends through your nearest soft play. I don't know why that's the example that came to mind for me, but just shut up, this is my video. Also Trapped, coming later in the decade, a gothic show about suspicion and betrayal. Do you see why these shows are great yet? My absolute favourite show of all time was actually a game show on cbbc. One by the name of Bamzuki. This was the fucking best show ever. Not just the best kids show, not just the best game show, not just the best show on cbbc, the best show ever. Fucking fight me on this, I dare you. I'll make a video soon about why this show is the fucking best. But to sum it up, Bamzuki is a show where teams of children download a program to create little creatures called Zooks. They then send those Zooks to the BBC, and the best ones are picked to participate in nationally syndicated virtual cockfighting. I fucking love this show. These game shows were experimental, weird, ambitious. I mean, for God's sake, the competitors in Raven go on a goddamn spirit quest just for the chance to win this rad as hell looking stick. That's fucking awesome! You would never get these sorts of shows nowadays, or at least not in the same capacity. But we'll talk about that later. I mostly watched the game shows on cbbc, but there were some other shows on there that were also really good. You got shows like Chucklevision, an iconic British children's comedy starring the Chuckle Brothers. The Story of Tracy Beaker. I didn't like this one as a kid, but I was a petty little shit, and I'm willing to accept now that it was probably a fairly good show. Am I High? A high-octane spy series where the government hires teenagers to take on international threats to society. And Dick and Dom in the Bungalow, which was discussed in Parliament due to its heavy use of toilet humour. I mean, it was a good fucking show, but like, Jesus Christ, why did our Parliament think that this was an important topic of discussion? Just why? Again, these are wonderfully creative, funny, or ambitious programs that you wouldn't really get today. Telling the stories of foster children, international spies, or men in their mid-20s yelling out bogies in public. Oh, also they licensed a bunch of international shows. We got Mona the Vampire, Cramp Twins, Even Stevens, Escape from Scorpion Island. That was a collaboration between Britain and Australia. Arthur, I do not like Arthur. I think Arthur is very bad. Arthur is a very good show. I was lying in that last line. I do not like Arthur at all. I hate Arthur. I hate Arthur. I hate Arthur. Yeah, I hate Arthur. Let's just move on to why the new stuff is kind of shit. Arthur. I hate Arthur. I hate Arthur. I hate... So fucking dumb. Now, calling all the shows on present-day cbbc irredeemable garbage that deserves to die in a fucking fire is a bit harsh, as there are still some shows that are pretty good, in my opinion. For example, Deadly 60 got a revival series recently, and it is still fucking rad as hell. Blue Peter's still good as well, and Shaun the Sheep will always fucking rule. But notice how all of these shows started before the 2010s. This is because I haven't really watched many shows from the 2010s, because none of them really interest me. The best example I can think of is a show called Ultimate Brain. It's a game show, remember I fucking love those things, where teams of children have to answer science questions asked to them by the goddamn missing link of human evolution. The whole show feels cheaper, lazier, and just generally more generic. Like, there's nothing about it that really makes it stand out amongst all the rest of the shows on the network. There's no ambition, there's no creativity, there's no room to respect the ability of the children playing. The show is fully incapable of taking itself seriously in any regard, and it just feels patronizing. Earlier cbbc game shows could be taken seriously. They weren't supposed to be funny or silly, they were a natural source of tension, drama, and competition. This just feels like Bigfoot got a PhD but decided instead to go into stand-up comedy. It's not good. And then there's Remotely Funny, which is anything but. You know how Ultimate Brain feels lazy and cheap? Yeah, Remotely Funny sees that and says, hold my beer. I mean, like, it takes place over the Skype call, for crying out loud. How lazy can you be? This isn't television, it's a shitty YouTube podcast. The premise for this show is that 3 children get into a Skype call and have to use various things from inside their house to try and be funny in different ways. That's it. And it's garbage. There was no effort put into this show, and it makes me feel sad that this was approved by the BBC. And I mean, there's also the prizes in these shows. Like, if you won Trapped, you got this cool-ass key. Raven has the aforementioned rad-as-hell stick. And in Bamzuki, if you won, you either got a poster or one of these trophies, depending on which version of the show you won. Do you want to know what the grand prize in Remotely Funny is? A fucking jumper. A Remotely Funny branded jumper. It's fucking pathetic. Final thing I want to do in this video is a comparison between an old cbbc show and a newer one. So I'm going to be talking about the show Raven, which got a revival series in 2018, I want to say. Me googling the Wikipedia thing for the cbbc launch date was a joke, but this is actually serious. I don't remember when the fucking Raven revival was. Yeah, 2017. Okay, so it turns out the revival series was in 2017. I should have looked that up before trying to film this video. But anyways, before I go into detail on the comparison between these, just know that this Raven is fucking brilliant, and this Raven is the exact same, except they got rid of all the good bits. The original Raven had 3 groups of 6 contestants, who in the show are called warriors, so I'm gonna call them that too, take part in grueling challenges to earn rings without losing lives. If you lost a challenge, you would lose a life, and whoever had the least lives at the end of a day would go through the Way of the Warrior, an unbelievably difficult obstacle course that only 4 warriors ever completed. If a warrior failed in the Way of the Warrior, they were eliminated immediately, which made it all the more exciting when somebody was able to get really far through the course or even complete it. It gave the warriors a last chance to prove themselves, and it was good, it was fun, it was tense, it was difficult, and I fucking loved it. Throughout the series, there's a feeling of tension and urgency during challenges, as it clearly sets up the stakes for failure and provides a compelling narrative explaining why everything is happening. Then, in The Last Stand, they made it look like an action-packed final battle boss fight, and made it look like a real challenge to get past it all. The whole show feels badass, and it's a worthwhile watch if you haven't seen it already. And then we look at the revival series and just see bootleg Power Rangers on a rope climb. Yeah, I don't like this one. The revival series of Raven is better than most modern cbbc shows, although that is likely due to the fact that it's based off of an already existing quality program. This version cuts down the number of warriors to 4 groups of 4 playing through 3 days each. This is bad for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, less players are changing about in the leaderboards, so it becomes pretty obvious who's going to be going through the Way of the Warrior at the end of day 1. Reason number 2, because both versions don't eliminate anybody in the first day of each group, except for the finals of the original series, that just means that 1 player gets eliminated and then is straight into the Last Stand in the next day, which just feels mean and unnecessary. Like, what is the point of eliminating 1 person before your big final challenge? There are only 4 of them. Why not just have all 4 of them survive until the end and then take part in the Last Stand? Like, that's just, it blows my fucking mind. There's also the fact that they got rid of lives as well, meaning you're just collecting rings for a higher number, and due to how common rings are in Raven challenges, there's not much of a consequence for losing. This is combined with the fact that you don't even lose rings unless you're claimed by a demon, which doesn't happen in every challenge. So you don't even get consequences for losing every time. You have to lose in a specific way for there to be punishment. Why? This makes no sense. Oh, and hey, also, remember when I said that it was pretty easy to tell who was going to go through the Way of the Warrior because it was only 3 days and 4 warriors? Less players are changing about in the leaderboards, so it becomes pretty obvious who's going to be going through the Way of the Warrior at the end of day 1. Well, I take that back because they removed the Way of the Warrior entirely. Whichever warrior has the least rings at the end of day 2 just goes straight home. I'm sorry, did you struggle in the first day and then do fairly well in the second? Well, tough shit, you might still be going home with no chance to redeem yourself. This is fucking infuriating to me because it completely ruins the format of the show. It destroys the tension and the fucking, it's not engaging. It's just, like, it doesn't work like this. It doesn't fucking work like this. The Last Stand takes place in an open field. I feel like that should tell you everything you need to know about how this version is different from the original. Now, listen, I know I've mostly talked about game shows, but that's just what I was obsessed with when I watched cbbc the most. I'm sure if I were a 7-year-old today, I would be louder, less horny, and probably happier with the shows that cbbc are doing right now. But I can't help but feel as though the older shows have held up better over the course of more than a decade than some of the shows that are only a couple of years old. Though I feel sad, angry, and bad for the younger generation because TV isn't as good as it used to be. God, I sound like a fucking boomer. I understand that the younger generation is currently still growing up with these shows, and would probably be more likely to enjoy them than me, a fully grown adult. I just hope that they can get some enjoyment that my cynical adult brain can't. Because if they can, then I guess maybe these shows aren't a complete waste of my license fee, my parents' license fee. Actually, on second thought, considering what we've just spoken about today, they probably are.